So today's video is going to be a little bit different from some of my other ones. Today I just want to have some free-flowing thoughts about hair loss, about my experience, about men in general, just not talking about their emotions, not talking about the things that they're going through, and keeping things bottled up. And hair loss is certainly a part of that. It's not every guy's experience, but it is a lot of guys' experience. And I think it really shows the struggle that guys have to share things they're going through. There's still a lot of pressure for guys to, look a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way, and not be affected by things like hair loss or other things that might be affecting them from a physical standpoint. It's something that I think about a lot. It's something that certainly my own hair loss experience brought to the forefront. I lost my hair around age 22 is when I first kind of started noticing it. I was in denial about it for a couple of years until it got so bad, so aggressive that I just couldn't ignore it anymore. I struggled with it for a long time. I was young, I was single, and it really affected my confidence. It affected my ability to feel okay about myself. And I think it was a struggle that I dealt with internally. I felt kind of embarrassed that it was such a struggle for me. I felt embarrassed to talk about it. Like, why does your hair loss matter that much to you? But it was really affecting me a lot in a lot of different ways. My confidence at my job and with dating and things like that. So it weighed on me heavily for a number of years. And I started looking into hair loss solutions. I tried Rogaine, I tried, biotin supplements, Propecia, and landed on getting a hair transplant, which is a whole nother story. But I ultimately went through a hair transplant procedure only to find out that didn't resolve my problems, because my own problems were mostly internal. I struggled with self-confidence basically my whole life. Growing up as a shorter kid in elementary school through junior high, through high school, I was definitely one of the shorter kids in my class. And that certainly affected my confidence just growing up. And I think that carried through into young adulthood. And so even though I'm average height now, I'm 5'8", which I guess a little under average. But then when my hair loss hit, it was like, come on, like I was the short guy and now I'm gonna be the bald guy. Like, how is that fair? And so my self-confidence never got a chance to really catch up. I was self-conscious about my height, which carried into, again, young adulthood, and then I started losing my hair, and then I became very self-conscious about my hair loss. So I never had the confidence level that I wanted. And so I felt like that really, kind of messed with me in my early 20s, and that's what led to the hair transplant. I thought, if I could get my hair back, I'll regain that confidence and things will be good. Of course, I come to realize that just having my hair back didn't help me at all. I still felt self-conscious. After getting the hair transplant, I was then nervous that people knew I get a hair transplant and would judge me for doing that. And it just created a whole nother, list of things to be self-conscious about. This really all stems from, not being able to talk about what I was struggling with when I was going through those early stages of hair loss. I wanted to handle it all internally. I didn't want to complain about it. I didn't want to cry about it to other people. And so I just kind of held it in and tried to deal with it in my own way. That's one of the reasons why I started this channel and started making these videos. Is I think that as men, we need to start normalizing being able to talk about the stuff that we're going through. We can't just keep all this stuff bottled up. because going to kill us. That's going to impact us in ways that we might not realize in the moment, but that will crop up later in our lives. So that is my general experience going through hair loss. Finally, after years, after going through the hair transplant, which I never really liked, I never felt like it looked natural, I finally decided to just shave it all off. And the amount of pressure that took off me is insurmountable. It felt like I had regained control. It felt like I was now making the decision. I was calling the shots. And the amount of confidence I got back, after that initial kind of shock period, couple weeks where, you look in the mirror and not recognize yourself. But once I kind of got used to that and became comfortable with just embracing being fully bald, I have never felt more relieved. I have never realized how much I could not think about my hair. Like, that was something that I thought about all the time. I was always thinking about my hair. When it was thinning especially, I was constantly, thinking about what it must look like. If people were talking to me, I'd be wondering if they were looking at my hair and noticing that it was thinning. So I'd be constantly brushing it to the side. I'd be trying to get it to lay in the right ways. I would be going to, the bathroom at work just to check on my hair. I checked my hair in the rearview mirror when I was driving, even by myself. It was something that was so, so all-encompassing in my life. I can't even believe now in hindsight how much I thought about it, how much I worried about it, and how much anxiety it gave me. So if you're watching this right now and you're going through something similar where you're losing your hair, you're stressing about it, you're anxious about it, you're not sure what's going to happen, I want you to know you're not alone in your situation. It sometimes feels like you're alone. I definitely felt that way. I felt like I was the only guy my age who was losing my hair. It felt so unfair, and it just seemed like there was no answers. Even after, like I said, even after the hair transplant, that did not resolve the issue. I still had thinning hair. I still was nervous about it. I was anxious about it. And I realized that one reason why I think going bald, especially going bald at a young age, is so hard is we're all so consumed with this image-focused world, social media, even regular media. If you look at movies and TV shows, there are very few main characters of movies and TV shows that are bald, much less balding. Now, there are a few examples, Bruce Willis, Jason Statham, The Rock, but those guys are fit very much into this, overly masculine action role. And I didn't feel like I fit into that kind of stereotype, if you will. I always tried to stay in good shape, but I never felt like I fit into that same type of image that those guys represent. So I felt like I was, outside of this circle, and I think a lot of guys feel that way. There's just not a lot of that representation, again, in media, and especially when you're losing your hair. If your hair is thinning, I would be very hard pressed to find a main character of a movie or TV show who has thinning hair or is having, male pattern baldness. Most Hollywood movie stars today have perfect hairlines, thick hair, and that can definitely, cause you to have some self-doubt. That can cause you to second guess yourself. And the part of that I really struggled with personally is thinking to myself, what are you complaining about? You're complaining that you don't have, representation in Hollywood. There's no balding, lead characters in big blockbuster movies. There are plenty of other people who don't get nearly enough representation in the media. What are you complaining about? Also, there are way worse things happening to other people in the world. There are people who are living in poverty. There are people who are, in wars. There are people who don't know what's going to happen to them the next day or the next week. And you're going to complain about the fact that you're losing your hair? Like, are you serious? Is that really an issue? And so I had these opposing thoughts in my mind where, on one hand, I knew that it was a superficial thing that I was stressing about, that I was worrying about, that I was anxious about. But on the other hand, it was affecting me on a day-to-day basis, even though logically I knew that things really weren't that bad. That hair loss, again, is superficial, but again, these opposing ideas, these opposing, thoughts in my mind made it that much more difficult, and I think made it that much more difficult for me to want to talk about it, because I felt like if I brought it up to friends or family members, that was the conversation that would play out in my mind. I'd bring it up, I'd say I'm struggling with it, and they'd say, well, suck it up. There are worse things happening in the world. You losing your hair is not that big of a deal. In reality, now I know in hindsight that my friends, my family would have been much more supportive had I brought it up, but that was the barrier in my mind that made it impossible for me to talk about it during that period of my life. But probably the coolest thing about starting to make these videos, I started making videos on TikTok because I've never really done anything in video before, and I wasn't that comfortable being in front of a camera. So I just started making short videos on TikTok, and I started getting guys that would reach out to me and, sharing some of their stories. And I realized that I definitely wasn't alone. And there are guys right now that are struggling with it, that are going through it, that think that, their life is over, or that they're never going to find anyone who's going to find them attractive. All these kind of, thoughts that me now on the back end of it, I realize are not true. But hearing from these other guys, I realize I had those same thoughts when I was in the thick of it. I had thoughts like, things are just over for me now. My hair, I'm losing my hair. I'm done. I'm cooked. But those were some thoughts that I definitely had myself, and I know for a fact that a lot of other guys have those thoughts too. So if you're one of those people, again, just know you're not alone. You will get through it. I consider myself a very anxiety-riddled person, a very low self-esteem person at one point in my life, and I managed to get through it. It was not an easy journey, but my hope is that in sharing some of my thoughts, some of my experiences, that will encourage some other guys to open up about their stories and just get some of those feelings off your chest, get them out of your head, because the more that you keep those thoughts in your head, the more you're going to spiral, the more that negativity is going to eat away at you. And it doesn't have to be that way. The hair loss industry, I think, very much capitalize on the fact that guys are insecure about this, and we're not talking about it, and we are taking, in some cases, kind of drastic steps towards, improving, the physical nature of ourselves. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with getting a hair transplant. I got one, and I know there's a lot of guys out there who have gotten them and gained a lot of confidence from having them done. But I do think that there is an industry that is encouraging you to be self-conscious about your hair loss, about going bald, because those procedures cost a lot of money. And the supplements and products all surrounding hair regrowth, getting your hair back, are not cheap. And they're typically things that you have to continue to maintain for as long as you want your hair. Because in many cases, once you stop doing some of these things, you will start to lose your hair, and and they know that. So there is a market around insecurity. I think women have experienced this for a long time. Once you can kind of create this insecurity around, once you create a problem and then you have a solution to sell, that turns into a pretty big market, and there are definitely those who are capitalizing on it. Again, I'm not anti getting your hair back. I'm not anti hair transplant or anything like that. I just want to encourage you to do the research and truly think about what it is that you want, and think about what it is that you are struggling with internally. Because for me, getting the hair transplant was not the solution, because the problem was in my head. The problem was the self-consciousness that I had about myself in general. Fixing something like my hairline was not the actual solution. Now, for you, maybe that is the case, but that's not going to be the case for everybody. So I encourage you to really think about what it is that you want, and talk it through with people that you know, people that you trust, to understand if getting that hair back, going through a hair transplant, going through that type of procedure, is that going to resolve your problems? Because if not, that's going to save you a lot of time, a lot of money, and I have gained so much by just shaving my head. Once I finally took that leap, which took me about 10 years, by the way. Once I finally took that leap, I gained so much from that. I gained so much confidence. I felt like I was back in control. I felt like I was no longer hiding from the world, if that makes sense. I felt like I was just, when I was out in public, I was just saying, here I am, this is me. And I can't even describe to you just how empowering that felt, how much better I felt about myself. And you might make the argument one way or another that you might look better with hair or without hair, but it's the way that you feel internally that matters. It doesn't matter how you look on the outside. It truly doesn't. And now, looking back on the whole situation, even though it took me 10 years to deal with it and get to the other side of it, I'm honestly glad it happened, because I grew so much from this experience. I learned so much about myself, and I honestly became a brand new person from who I used to be. Like, I did not think it was possible to go even a day without thinking about my hair. And once I shaved my head, there were periods of time where I don't think about it at all. I can go weeks without thinking about it. It was like a brand new life, because it wasn't a life where I was constantly bogged down mentally by this one superficial thing that was just eating and eating away at me. So if you're going through it right now, I get it. I know it's really, really hard. It's harder than people who never go through it would ever realize. But just know there's light at the end of the tunnel. There really is. Having gone through it, I know that it's true, and I know you'll get through it as well. So stick with it. Make sure you're taking the right steps to talk about it, to understand what it is that you're really self-conscious about. Understand what it is that you really want to do. And then if you decide to take that leap, shave your head, I'm confident that you will feel as relieved as I did. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I know I was kind of rambling in this video. I'm going to try not to edit it too much, because I kind of wanted to just try doing a more of a free form, let my thoughts flow type of video. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it helpful, and I will see you on the next one.